He knows they're coming. Let's start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Makakodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is He Knows They're Coming. Well, what's that speaking about? Speaking about Edomites. Who are the day that are coming? Let's talk about Yahushai and the angels. And they know this to be a fact. This is why they keep preparing. You know, they've known about the existence of so-called UFOs for the longest. And they have these think tanks and different individuals trying to come up with solutions on what to do in these different situations, in these different scenarios. And that's why, you know, they pay certain individuals just to pretty much sit around all day thinking about solutions to all these different problems that they'll be facing in the future. The what ifs, you know, what about this, what about that scenarios. Because at the end of the day, they want to push their New World Order, which their New World Order is not the continuity of government that people think, but the continuity of the so-called international bankers' world and their goals and their enterprise that they plan on bringing. You know, and they've read the scriptures before. You know, they've done the research. They've looked, you know, into the scriptures. The scriptures say that they are wiser than Daniel. So they have, and they said there's no secret that they can hide from you. So they have searched out, you know, all different types of prophecies in the scriptures. They've dug up sites. They've, you know, they've come across art, different paintings, and eyewitness evidence of these chariots, who they call UFOs or UAPs or whatever other name they want to put upon them. And they know that they're coming. This is why they're scrambling. Back in the 50s, I believe it was Dwight Eisenhower that was in office at the time. And the chariots showed up over Capitol Hill, I believe it was. There was a bunch of them. And they sent out the Air Force out there. But by the time they got there, the chariots had already took off. You know, and then they gave a speech about it. You know, they've given different speeches over the years. Reagan has given speeches on it. And it kind of pretty much was quelled down somewhat until now. You know, where Donald Trump, I believe he's the 45th president, if I'm not mistaken, has been given the orders to start what is called, what they call a space force. And the reason why the space force is set up is because they know that the chariots will be coming. And they know that we're very close to this. And they know that when these signs and these prophecies of the wars, the rumors of wars and earthquakes and uproars of the people and false messiahs and all that comes up, they know that not too long after that will come the appearance of Yahushai and the angels, because it's written in the scriptures. But they plan on fighting against the Lord, but they're going to lose. This is Job 5:12. He disappointed the devices of the crafty so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise. So who is this that's disappointing the devices of the crafty? This is the Most High. That's disappointing their venture. You know, they're disappointing their endeavor, so to speak, or their, you know, their plans. He's putting a monkey wrench in their plans. It says he taketh the wise in their own craftiness, because the very same technology that they're using to watch for the Lord and to create these different weapons is the same technology and the same craft that the Lord is going to cause to fall upon their own self, because they're setting up traps that they're going to fall in. They have defense mechanisms that are going to be used against them. They have weaponry that's going to be used against them to bring forth their demise, their destruction. So it says he taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the forward is carried headlong. and they're not going to be able to accomplish this so-called New World Order. They're only going to get so far with it. So now what I wanted to do is I wanted to go to the book of Ezekiel, the first chapter, which is a heavy book because it speaks about the angels and the chariots and the form of the angels and how the chariots move and how the angels move. And they know all of this. They know that it's humanly impossible to defeat Yahweh Shai and the angels. They know that they can't, they don't stand a chance. But that pride of theirs won't let them admit that. You know, it's just like you going into a fight and you know you're going to lose this fight, and you know that the guy that's going to fight, that you're going to fight is way better than you. You know, he has more experience than you, and you know that he can take you out. But because you have that pride in you, you say, the hell with it, I'm going to take this fight anyway. And you end up getting the snot beat out of you. Well, that's what's happening with Esau. They're going to get the snot beat out of them, you know, by Yahweh Shai and the angels. This is Ezekiel 1:1. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Kibar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of the Most High. So this is Ezekiel seeing these visions that the Most High showed him. And what he showed him was actual chariots and the angels with the chariots. And he described the angels and he described the chariots, you know. It says, in the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, the word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel, the priest, the son of Buzai, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Kibar, and the hand of the Lord was there upon him. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north. And this whirlwind is not talking about an actual wind, you know, a tornado or anything like that. It's talking about an actual chariot. And the reason why he described it as a whirlwind was because when it came, it was spinning. You know, the angel, you know, the angels, them inside joke. But the chariots could come smooth, just floating. They could move lightning speed, faster than the speed of light. They could come different shapes. They could come spinning. They could come different ways. You know, there's no limit to what these chariots could do. It says, a great cloud and fire enfolding itself. Let me read north. A great cloud, and this great cloud was a gigantic chariot. And this is why Esau, in the movie Independence Day, they actually put this, you actually see a big cloud, and then you start seeing something coming out of the cloud. And then when that object is coming out of the cloud, you kind of see like a fire kind of around it. Because what they were doing is they were mimicking what the scriptures say. But pretty much that was for us to get like a visual, so to speak, of what is coming. Because when the chariots come, that's how they're going to come. And most people are going to be nervous. There was a Jake that was listening to us for the whole camp Saturday, and he was agreeing pretty much with everything except for when we got to the part about the chariots. And then, I don't know about that, because you know why? Because this is not something that is accepted in this society. It's something that's taboo. And when you do speak about it, you know, most people are taught that it's nothing more than a fairy tale. So since it's so-called a fairy tale, people won't accept it. And that's how they look at it. They view it as something that's strange. And that's what the scriptures speak about, the strangeness of their salvation. You know, the strangeness of the Most High's work. Because most people look at it as a fairy tale. You know, because that's how Esau painted it in their minds. Because they have control of the media. That's that idiot box. It says, in a great cloud, and the fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof, as the color of amber, and out of the midst of the fire. So these angels, or this chariot that came, it was a cloud, but it was like a cloud that was on fire. And the fire came from what? From the lights of the chariots. You know, and that's what the fire is speaking about. When you read in the during the deliverance of Egypt, they said what? It was a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The pillar of fire wasn't an actual fire. It was the lights that were emanating off of the chariot. It says, Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of four living creatures. Now these are the angels. First, he saw the chariot, then he saw the angels coming out of the chariot. It says, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. So it was actual men, but they had different appearances, which he actually saw the appearances that he's about to explain. But the appearance that he saw of their faces and the way that he described it actually represented different attributes of the angels. It says their appearance was like the likeness of a man, and every one had four faces, and every one had four wings. So they actually saw this. He actually saw this. It says, and their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. So when he looked down at their feet, he said that their feet were like calf's foot. And this is why people get confused when they read the scriptures, because they're looking and say, well, he's looking at somebody that's part animal and part man. No, it was the boots that they had on that had the cleft, the split in it. And you do have boots out there, ninja boots and whatever different type of boots that have the toes split away from the rest of the other four toes. And that's what they had on. They were girded. The angels are not white baby angels flying butt naked up in the heavens with wings on their back. They're actual men that have garments on. They're fully girded, you know, because they do have bodies, even though they're spirits, but the spirits have bodies. How do we know that? When we read 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, which speaks about the bodies that are up in the heavens. You have terrestrial bodies and you have celestial bodies. The angels are celestial bodies, and we here on the earth are terrestrial bodies. You see? And Esau knows this. He knows this. And he knows that Yahweh Shai and the angels are coming for his ass soon. And they sparkle like the color of burnished brass. So what he did was he saw them and he actually described what they looked like, and he described them as being burnished brass. Now, when you look up the word brass, you could it also mentions copper. It also mentions bronze. And that's what the angels looked like. They were brown-skinned men, and their skin was bright. You know, it had that shine on it, like Esau used to call Jake back in the days. He used to call him shines because of the oil that was on Jake's face that made them shine. So the angels had that glow about them. You know, they had that special glow. That dark skin was glowing. And this is what Ezekiel is explaining and writing down. So this is like the color of burnished brass. And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their four sides, and they four had their faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went. They went every one straight forward. So when the angels walked, they didn't turn. Like you brothers at the old Street Fighter game, you had Bison, and he would just like float forward. You know, you could float forward and float backwards or float, you know, side to side. When they would move, they wouldn't turn. Same thing with the chariots. The chariots would just move in one motion. Like a car, you have to make a turn, left turn or right turn. A plane, you have to, you know, turn. A helicopter, you have to turn, because those are the rules of aerodynamics. They don't have rules. They have no limits. So they can move lightning speed, stop at the drop of a hat, or take off in a different direction without even having to turn. Right? It says, as for their likeness, the likeness of their faces, they four had the face of a man. So they were actual men, but when Ezekiel saw them, he saw four beings, and he saw them in this same manner. He saw they had four faces. The man part represents wisdom, and the face of a lion, the lion part or the lion face represented courage. It says on the right side, and they four had the face of an ox. The ox represents strength, because the angels have, you know, strength that's beyond any human power, right? It says on the left side, they four also had the face of an eagle, and the eagle represents what? That they could fly, because the eagle is known as the highest flying bird. So these were the four attributes of these beings that that Ezekiel saw. But he actually saw that, just like the Apostle John on the island of Patmos actually saw an actual dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and crowns upon his heads. But it represented something. So these angels that he saw, these were the attributes that it represented, of those 4 attributes. It says, thus were their faces and their wings were stretched upon, upward. 2 wings of every one were joined one to another, and 2 covered their bodies. And they went every one straight forward whither the spirit was to go. So that the chariots will go everywhere the spirit or the angels went, the chariots will go. Why? Because the angels were actually inside the chariots. It says, and they turned not when they went, because they didn't have to make a turn like man does. Even now when we're walking, you could walk, and even if you want to go to the side, I mean, you could step sideways, but you could look at it that way. You're walking forward, and then you stop and then start walking sideways. So the angels are moving forward, and then they're just hovering back and forth. And that's why it says in Genesis, the 1st chapter, that the spirit of the powers, it said moved. But when you go to the Hebrew, Marakapath means it hovered. So they were just hovering. Like a hovercraft, you see it gliding. That's what the angels glide. They glide gracefully. It says, as for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like the burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of lamps. It went up and down among the living creatures, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. So what is it speaking about? It's speaking about, let's see if I can find this precept. It's speaking about the angels. The angels then? The angels are nothing more than fire, energy, pure energy. This is Psalms 104:4. Who maketh his angels energy that emanates from these beings. And we have, our spirit is like that, but the Lord turned our spirit down. But the heat that's in our body comes from our spirit. That's why when a person finally give up that last breath, that's the spirit leaving the body. What happens not too long after that? The body rigor mortis starts to set in. Why? Because the heat then left the body, which is the spirit, which keeps the body alive. You see? All right, so now going back, verse 14, and the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. And that's how the chariots move. Now, any of you brother that's seen that video, I'm not sure if they still have it. It's a NASA video, I believe it is. And they show you a chariot, a big chariot, kind of flying, like kind of gliding. And then all of a sudden, you see the chariot taking off, and you see a flash of light coming, and then you see a ray coming. That was Esau shooting a laser at the chariot. But before they could even get the laser off, the chariot had already took off. And then you see the laser, the light, the flash of light from the shot of the laser, and then you see the laser coming by after that. So these chariots move lightning speed. They can move extra slow. They could be made very tiny. They could be made very huge. All in a second of time. So how can you fight against that? That's what the scriptures say. When Yahweh Shai and the angels come back, these nations are going to be fighting each other. They ain't going to stop and automatically just start fighting against the Lord, because they're going to be scared, but they're going to be, oh shit, what the fuck, They're going to be nervous, and their only response is to attack and destroy, and then their whole thing is they wholeheartedly believe, and worship their missiles. That's why they be huffing and puffing at other nations. And when you watch that movie, I think it's Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which is the second Planet of the Apes, in there they show you that they worship the missile. And on the missile, they had the trident on the bottom. On 2 of the trident, they had Alpha on one side and Omega on the other side, which are the symbols of Yahweh Shai. But those chariots are the beginning and the ending of Esau's kingdom. Because that was a blessing that they were given, but that same blessing the Lord is going to use to destroy them. Amen. Amen. Woo! Verse 15. Now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creature with his four faces. So these particular chariots were round shaped, saucer shaped, so you could understand. All right. It says the appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl, which is yeah, bitch ass E man, fucking around with the feed. Um, yeah, so let's go back to I don't know how much of that it caught, but you know it got cut off for a minute, a couple of minutes there. So I'm gonna go back to Ezekiel 1:16. It says the appearance of the wheels and the works was as it were Shalakim. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of a beryl, and they four had one likeness in their appearance, and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of the wheel. And you got to understand that that's what Ezekiel had to be able to describe what he saw, because remember they didn't have terms like UFOs and UAPs and none of that back then, you know, flying saucers and none of that. That's why they couldn't explain it in that manner, you know. So when you look, when he saw the chariots, you got to think of two wheels, you know, one spinning inside of the other. That's why I said a wheel within the middle of the wheel. Now you could have had one wheel going in one direction and the other wheel going in the opposite direction. You know, we don't know. You know, we could just speculate from what Ezekiel is saying, you know, and describing it as, right? So it says, when they went unto upon their four sides, and they turned not even when they went. So the chariots didn't turn, neither did the angels turn. They don't have to, they hover. Remember, the movements in the fourth dimension are totally different than the movements here. Everything here is three-dimensional, you know. In the fourth dimension is totally different. It says as for their rings, they were so high, they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them four. And that was the actual windows in the chariot. So you have different shapes, different forms, you know, and these devils know because they've seen them. They've suppressed a lot of this information for a long time, but now it's time for it to come out. And when the living creature went, the wheels went by them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Why? Anywhere the chariot went, the angel went, because the angels were inside of the chariots. It says, whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go. And the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. See, they were inside of the chariots. It says, when those went, these went. And when those stood, these stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. So everywhere these chariots went, the angels was there. So they were like a unit. You know, like when you get in a car, when you first buy a car, right? You feel like a little awkward, you know, until you and that car get accustomed to each other, and your spirit is into that car, and you become one with the car. So that was like the angels with their chariots, with their vehicles. You know, they were one with their vehicle. Like they show you a little bit of that in that movie when the chick was trying to show him, you know, to become one with the bird that he was flying on top of. So look at that as the angel with the chariots. You know, they had to become one. It says, in the likeness, verse 22, and the likeness of the firmament upon the heads over the living creature was as the color of the terrible crystal stretched forth over the heads above. And that was the actual firmament, because the firmament is clear. That's why it described it as a terrible crystal. Like when you see like in the movie Superman, they show you that ice cave, you know, but imagine that, but just strictly just clear. You know, you can see right through it. That's how the Ezekiel, the prophet, described the ozone layer. And under the firmament were there, because you know what the Lord did was he showed them a vision, and he heightened Ezekiel's senses to be able to see these things. Because we can look up when it's not cloudy, but we can't see the firmament in the daytime or the night. But the Lord heightened up, heightened the senses of Ezekiel to where he was able to actually see the firmament, the ozone layer, and actually describe what it looked like. That's bad, man. And under the firmament were their wings straight, the one toward the other. Every one had two, which covered on this side, and every one had two, which covered on that side, their bodies. And when they went, I heard the noise of their wings like the noise of great waters, and the voice of the Almighty, the voice as the voice of the Almighty, the voice of speech, as the noise of an host. When they stood, they let down their wings. Why? Because they're coming. Because this is, you got to remember, this is the Most High's heavenly host. This is his heavenly armies. So when you see armies coming, you hear that tumult, that noise, whether they're marching, or shooting or whatever the case is, or yelling or grunting, So that's how the angels are coming in that manner, coming together as one unit. And there was a voice from the firmament that was over their heads when they stood and had let down their wings. And above the firmament, that was, because you have the Most High, you have Yahushua, and then you have Michael the archangel, which is the captain over all of those other angels underneath Yahushua. And Yahushua is underneath the Most High. Yahushua would be, the Most High would be the ultimate, he's the ultimate. Then you have Yahushua, which is the general, and then you have the captain, which is Michael. So you could understand, so to speak. And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne. This is the throne of the Most High, as the appearance of a sapphire stone, and upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it. That's the Most High sitting on his throne. So you got to remember, this is a vision that the Lord showing Ezekiel, heighten his senses to be able to see, and to be able not only to see these things, but to be able to describe it to a T in the words and objects that could be described back then. So back then, this was like the top technology that he was describing it as. It's just like today, if somebody was to see these things, they would describe it in today's terminologies, but they would describe it to modern technology and modern things that we see today. As birds flying, you see the birds flying. I don't know if you were able to see that. It says, and I saw as the color of amber, as the appearance of fire round about within it, from the appearance of his loins even upward, and from the appearance of his loins even downward. I saw as it were the appearance of fire, and it had brightness round about. This is the lights from the chariots. You see? As the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud, and in the day of rain. So was the appearance of the brightness round about. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And when I saw it, I fell upon my face, and I heard a voice of one that spake. So you got to remember, this was a fierce thing that he saw. He saw the angels, he saw the chariots, he saw the maneuvers and how they moved and how they operated and how they were as one unit. And then after all of this is when the Lord started giving Ezekiel his orders to speak to the house of Israel, to tell them whether they were here, whether they were forbid, to be the one that was going to warn them, to tell them about their wrong deeds and the things that they're doing wrong, if they listen or not. And Esau knows these things because he searches these things out. He has his top so-called scholars search things out. He has eyewitness testimony of these different things that have happened. But they've suppressed a lot of this information over the years because they're trying to come up with a solution on how to defeat these beings. Because they defeated everybody else on the planet, how can they defeat these beings? And this is why they got the Space Force and they got all this different technology and the scientists working overtime trying to come up with traps and different weaponry that they'd be able to fight against Yahweh and the angels to defeat them. But they're deranged, they're mad. Because they're not going to be able to do it. So I just wanted to go through that through Ezekiel, the first chapter, because, thinking about the Space Force, and then the title came into my mind. You know, E knows that they're coming. That's dealing with Yahweh Shai and the angels. And Yahweh Shai and the angels are a major threat to this devil's empire. And the words that we're speaking is a major threat to these devils and their empire. And that's why they get nervous and they're going into slander and false witnessing. Why? Because they have no way of combating, spiritually combating what we're saying. And they know that what we're saying is the truth. And they know that the prophets are out here. You've had many false prophets, many false religions that have popped up. But at the very end, the Lord sent his prophets. And what were the prophets supposed to do? Let me give the last precept, Jeremiah 28. Jeremiah 28 and 8. And it says, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms of war and of evil and of pestilence. And we're coming down to the end of a society, Mr. So-called white man, you Edomites. Esau. You're coming to the end of your empire. And at the end, when the Lord comes back, the first person he's coming to visit is who? Who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments? Because the Edomites will be the last to rule in this empire, in these world empires. And they will be the last nation to rule when the Lord Yahweh Shai would come back. This is our 2 Ezra 6 and 7. Then answered I and said, what shall be the parting asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So, or the nation that will be ruling at the end will be who? The Edomites. That's why they're trying to, well, the Edomites were done away with. The Edomites are the Arabs. And if you go, this is what it means. This is what. So what you're saying is wrong. But like the brother Elder Menatazak Bas down in the, I'm about to say Indiana, down in South Carolina said, they don't want to deal with prophecy. And that's the truth. Because prophetically, according to the scriptures, the last person or the last nation that would be ruling would be who? The Edomites. So when we look on the planet, we don't see that the Chinese are ruling. We don't see that the Japanese are ruling. The Africans, the Arabs, the East Indians, the Polynesian people, the Syrians, the Assyrians. We don't see none of these people ruling. Who is ruling the planet Earth? The so-called white man, which this term white doesn't even belong to them. That's not even a nation. That's a made-up nation. So by process of elimination, if the Edomites will be ruling at the end, who's ruling? The so-called white man. So who are the Edomites? The so-called white people, beginning with their top banking elite. So he knows they're coming. He knows that Yahweh Shai and the angels are coming to take them down. And that's why the Lord said he will not meet thee as a man. And this is why King David wrote, who will lead me into that strong city? Who will lead me into Edom? Will not thou, O Lord? Because back then, King David and Joab and them, they had Esau under subjection. So what was that talking about? That's talking about in these times now. Because remember, King David was a prophet. He was talking about these times now where Esau would be so strong that no nation would be able to fight against him. It tells us that in Revelation 13. Who's able to make war with the beast. And the beast is who? EU and NATO, which are who? Edomites. So-called white people. So he knows that they're coming. He knows that Yahweh Shai and the angels are on their way. That's why they're trying to get every preparation done possible to fight against the Lord and against his angels. So with that, I pray that you brothers have been edified. And to the next time I say, Shalom.